Alright, here we go, criminal investigation class. This is going to be chapter 18 in your book. It's talking about drug investigations. There's at least one, possibly two PowerPoints in the course materials content section under week 13, so make sure you go and review those. When you talk about these drug investigations, we first have to get some perspective on what we're looking at and what we're trying to do. We've already talked about other laws being a representation of what society demands. Society still demands some investigation, prosecution, and punishment for drug crimes. We're changing some of those, obviously, legalizing weed, legalizing mushrooms in Denver is changing some of that thought process. But as it stands now, we still have, people whining about the opioid crisis and looking at other kinds of drug problems as still a problem. And as long as there's laws and as long as there's people who think there's a problem, there'll be a need for investigating these type of things. Now, I've had lots of experience in my career doing these. I spent 10 years in a multi-jurisdictional drug task force. I did undercover work. I did clandestine lab investigations and takedowns with one of the first lab teams in this region. So I have quite a bit of experience in this. It is not an area that is a conventional investigation. Most criminal investigations are based on a reaction to the incident already occurring. Somebody commits a burglary, the victim calls, the police arrive and do an investigation. Someone hurts somebody or kills somebody, the police arrive and do an investigation. Most of these drug investigations are proactive investigations. You're working off a piece of information, some intel, or a series of intel that someone's doing drugs, or has a lab, or is selling drugs. And then you build your investigation because of it. And because these investigations are different, proactive, that means the techniques of investigation are different. You're going to be spending a lot more time doing things like surveillance, poring over documents and phone records and bank records. You're going to try to introduce an undercover. You're going to use informants to be your in to buy the drugs. And with all that, you're going to build cases. The other thing that these end up being is longer-term type investigations. On the other ones, once you find a suspect, you analyze the evidence, you do a little more work and get more evidence. The case is pretty much done. On these kind of investigations, they can go on for months, trying to build a good case. In these drug investigations, you're always trying to reach to the next level. Who's the next member in the hierarchy that we can try to take down to stop this organization from distributing drugs? Now, understand that there's really four classifications of drugs. There's stimulants, cocaine, methamphetamine, caffeine. There's depressants, alcohol and marijuana. There's hallucinogenics, LSD, psilocybin, mushrooms. And there's analgesics, which are the painkillers, heroin, morphine, Dilaudid, and any of the prescription drugs that are hydrocodone or oxycodone based. We love in America to try to classify our drugs as good drugs or bad drugs, or these are more dangerous and these are less dangerous. Understand how ridiculous that is. Any drug is probably not good for you to consume and put in your body, especially on a regular basis. Okay? So to say, well, my drug of choice is alcohol, or my drug of choice is weed, and that means it's a good drug, or a safe drug, or a better drug than heroin or meth, is ridiculous. Okay? You're saying that because you want to try to justify to yourself how the one you like is better than the one someone else likes. Just get that out of your head. All of that's ridiculous. None of it is good for you to consume on a regular basis. There's plenty of studies over the years. We've been studying this stuff for 50 years. None of it can be considered good or safe. Okay? Now, do they have their uses? Of course they have their uses. Is moderation the key? Of course it is. But I'm just trying to make the point to you. Don't go off on your high horse and go, I smoke weed and it's a safe drug because it comes from a plant. So does cocaine come from a plant. So does heroin come from a plant. So does LSD. So does methamphetamine. Okay, the beginning precursors for all of those are plants. Okay. So don't try to do all this justification. Be honest with yourself. If you like smoking weed because you like the way it makes you feel, then admit it. I like smoking weed because it makes me feel good. And I understand that sucking it into my lungs is probably not a long-term plan for good health. But I choose to do it because I like the way it makes me feel. That's an honest answer. Don't try to justify it with all this bullshit. Well, it's safe and it's healthy and it's good for you. It's not good for you. Okay, back to the investigations. We digressed a little bit. The investigations are going to be based on all those techniques I already mentioned. Even taking down Clan Labs is going to be based on those type of investigations. Working undercovers and finding out where the lab is through the use of informants, doing surveillance to watch and buy the precursor chemicals and take them to a location. In these investigations, you're going to do lots of search warrants. You get really good at doing search warrants when you do these kind of investigations for a long time, because so much of it is based on those search warrants being what you need to gather the evidence to build a good investigation. A lot of it is looked at as exciting, glamorous investigating, and some of it is. Things like surveillance are not. Things like writing warrants for records and bank records and those things are not. But they are necessary to do this kind of investigation. The last part of this is going to be about using these type of investigations to then do civil seizures, seize assets that were bought with illegal gains from the drug trade. This gets controversial. Some people don't like it, that the government's seizing assets and then putting them to their use. Most of the vehicles I drove in the 10 years I was in the drug task force were either paid for by vehicles we seized, sold, and used the money to get another vehicle, or they were outright seized vehicles that I then drove. Lots of people don't like that concept. They don't like the idea that not only are you liable criminally for your drug crimes, but you can be liable financially when they seize your assets. Look at the PowerPoints. They follow this similar pattern. There isn't really anything more about the investigations. So, enjoy. See ya.